opportunities which can make your business more resilient. As the pandemic leads to more remote interactions between customers and organizations, the network architecture of the latter has become more hybrid in nature, divided between core and edge case data on and off prem. So today you will get to hear views from industry leaders on how to manage that entire enterprise security journey in a more holistic way on this panel discussion titled Strengthen Digital Transformation with Converged Network and Security. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan, and in this episode of Virtual Workplace 2.0, powered by Tata Communications and presented by Mint, I will be speaking with industry leaders to help us all gain insights on how embedding security natively in your cloud thinking can transform the way you work and serve customers more effectively. Joining me on the panel are Gaurav Goyal, Head of India Prime Digital Sales at Tata Communications; Pavan Chawla, Chief Information Security Officer at Future Generali India Life Insurance; Prasanna Lohar, Head of Innovation and Technology Architectures at DCB Bank; Mehriyar Patel, who's the Group Chief Information Officer for Digital Solutions at Logistics Major Gina and Company; and M.A. Kishan Kumar, Group Chief Technology Officer at ASK Investment Managers Private Limited. Thank you everyone for joining us for this conversation around converging network and security to strengthen the digital foundation and transformation of an enterprise. Let's start with two sectors which have seen challenging times during this pandemic, and that is logistics and of course financial services. Let's start with logistics. Mehriyar, coming to you. Considering the impact of lockdowns and uncertainty in the, say, transportation sector, what are the changes that you have made to deploy, manage, and use network services for reliable operations, maximum staff performance, and strong security?
So, Gautam, thank you for setting the tone for this conversation, and it's really relevant in today's times. So, to quickly jump into the question that you asked, I think logistics is one sector which is primarily involved 24/7. So, there is no sleeping times. Our soldiers have been in the street up and serving our customers. Now, if you look at the logistics as a sector today, we talk about freight forwarding, we talk about 3PL, we talk about express as a last mile as a situation. So I think that is the only sector which we see that deliveries reach you on time. And then technology is the backbone of this situation. If we talk about technology at Gina and Company, we are talking about collaboration platforms, cloud platforms, which are available 24/7 with no given amount of downtime. So as a strategy, if you look at it, I feel that we have been open into accepting new standards. When I talk about new standards, we are talking about situations where we can collaborate and work and offer solutions not only to our employees, but also to our customers. And that is going to be one of the leading challenges for us. When a customer comes and uses solution for a logistics industry, he's not going to ask you, can I operate from a desktop or a mobile or a laptop or an iPad? The solution has to be available to him. So that is something which is very, very crystal clear in this situation that we are in today. What a customer demands, he has to get.
It's bring your own interaction, so to say. You know, when we say bring your own device, it's now morphed to bring your own interaction.
Absolutely.
Which brings with it challenges, but also opportunities, because if you do it right, your customer journey becomes that much more richer and you stand out from your competition.
Sure.
Fair point taken. So that was logistics. Let's see how the financial services industry fared and what they did in terms of securing their architecture, but also growing it organically. So Pavan, let me come to you. You know, considering the boost in network traffic due to remote access needs created during the pandemic, what are the changes you made to deploy, manage, and use network services for, again, reliable operation, maximum staff performance, and strong security?
Gautam, it's a very interesting question, and it's a difficult one to answer that as well, because after logistic, if you look at it in pandemic, the second people was worried about was the money from where will they get, and whether they have enough insurance cover to cover the cost of medicines and hospitalization. And that's where the importance of servicing customer comes into the picture. With number of cases increasing, the demand of that also increased, and uh, uh, to service the customers, AI and ML played a very important role. When we talk about AI and ML, it's by looking at the need of the customer and whatever they need at their fingertip. Our chatbot has played a very important role in providing the relevant information to the customer at any given point of time. Whenever they need it, at least the basic information should be provided to them. Second comes the underwriting and defining the RPA, and at each point when a person is buying a policy, a person is claiming an amount for his insurance, whether he is getting serviced at any point of time, uh, whether there is any need of a customer at any given point of time, if he tries to reach our 800 number, or any our call centers were up and running, and we were able to service all our customers at that point of time. Every important aspect we have taken care, being a futuristic company, and that has helped us sail through so far, and we look forward to sail through by bringing a new technology in place which can help us easing the pain of the customer and delivering the result to the customers whatever they need.
And what about security, Pavan, in terms
Uh,
of data security?
Absolutely. So security is an important aspect and need to be looked at. We ensured that our products are have uh, have gone through rigorous security testing before they got into the production. We worked day and night to ensure our products are secure. Security is something which needs to be built, and it has to start from day one. Security is not something which you can bring in at a later stage. So whenever you are deciding a product, whenever you are customizing a product, whenever you are making a change, it has to pass through a security gate. Fortunately, we had that kind of a SOP defined within the organization, which ensured that whenever there is a change in happening in the product versus the need of the customer or the need of the market, it goes through the security test first before it gets released into the market or for end user to use. And that's how we have been able to manage and secure our network, our application, every touch point through which the customers are reaching us.
All right, that's the insurance sector experience. We've heard logistics, insurance. Now let's come to the hot sector, the banking sector. Prasanna, from a banking perspective, it's all about digital first, branchless banking now. But considering demand at an unprecedented scale, how did you keep the wheels running and take care of its security at the same time?
I think a very good question after two panels. Okay, so I'm ready. I think it's first of all, I think we are blessed with a very good regulator, RBI, right? Reserve Bank of India. And what we have seen, right, since 2013-14, lot many changes or lot many recommendations, guidelines being published by RBI on a regular basis. It's not like that they said, let's implement 2FA and they have stopped. Or it's not like that they said, let's implement fraud risk management tool at a bank level or at a service provider level or adaptive authentications. So I think it has gone multifold. It is not restricted only to an implement technology to safeguard your territory networks or to safeguard your applications and so on. It has provided a guideline, right? So wherein with how a bank should have a robust governance structure, people structure. What are different skill sets should bank have, right? As a CISO or as a MD or even as a CTO, right? What all different skill sets are required, and how these skill sets should be evaluated on a regularly basis. Okay, and the different tools to be implemented, SOC practices or FRM, or I was talking about at a bank level, what are technologies to be implemented, how applications to be. I think Pawan was talking about SOP, right? So how every application production movement has to be safeguarded by IT security with a detailed VAPT or a continuous VAPT in form of web application firewalls. Or I think now it has become a sanity, like sitting in a glass houses, we know how do we really safeguard. But it's a always race, right? We have seen rise of new technologies. In the last 2-3 years, we have seen adoption of AI or mobility or machine learning or different type of channels are coming, right? So tomorrow we are opening up API, so it's altogether a different channel compared to the earlier we had a branch banking or internet or mobile. So open banking opens up thousands of channels. The way we will integrate APIs for account opening or payment experience or any of those banking experience. And moreover, tomorrow's business models will be on an aggregation kind of thing. It means like some insurance company, some mutual fund company, and banking company together providing APIs to a platform, right, where same customer is availing those services. So how do we safeguard complete network? So responsibility is not on only on bank as a one territory. Now it has gone beyond. Now look at UPI. Is a transaction starts from one bank's app and ends up to the some other app. It's a complete ecosystem we have to safeguard. Now I think the guideline which say example recently RBI has provided digital payment security controls on 18th February, which talks about the governance structure, talks about PCI DSS for cards or payment ecosystem. It talks about how mobile apps should have additional controls. It talks about how internet banking should have additional controls. Apart from controls at app level, it talks about governance structure. How do you report, right? I think that's how we have seen, and it's not like that RBI says implement it and sits idle, right? It on a regularly basis they visit to the banks, and I think we have seen some of the cases like some X or Y bank has faced in the last few months, right? Based upon that, they have started inspecting almost all banks. I think DPSC is the outcome of those things which we have seen. Apart from outcome or apart from waiting, some fraud has happened in the way back in 17, 18. I think RBI has learned how do you really bring a technology, and while bringing a mobile banking, internet banking, it has its own guideline. How do we really safeguard? So awareness part at a internal employee level or awareness part at a customer level is also very important.
Absolutely,
Now,
and
important part,
it's the
Gautam,
framework which is
just
designed,
to
right, Prasanna? Just to add in your point.
just to end my initial remarks, there are a lot of new technologies we adopted in the last. AI is becoming normal technology, right? How or AI ML or is a normal technology. So when 5G will come in our life, or when wearables will become tomorrow's customer, or your machines or homes or cars will become tomorrow's customer, so responsibility will goes to the next level. As a BFSI industry, we should be ready for that aspect also. When 5G will become a prominent communication network in the next 2 to 3 years at a data center level or at a customer level, I think challenges will be different. Security will become invisible. Okay, your channels will become invisible in form of augmented reality or virtual reality. Your form factors of doing transactions will change. I think that will be interesting time, and the organizations and I think regulators are now looking at that angle. How do we onboard blockchain or any of those technologies? So I think in a nutshell, Gautam, I think regulator in combination with the collaboration with the banks and tech service providers also now bringing their level up to high, right? Zero trust or deception technology. Quite a lot of things are now coming into the to safeguard one technology. But it's a, I think what we have seen, it's a journey, right? We have seen to safeguard one technology, we bring another technology. So how soon we can make it more invisible and more comfortable for the customer, that will drive our whole journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. As you said, it's like the network effect of enterprise security, where
Yes,
all
yes.
players in the ecosystem have that framework embedded within the way they work. And even if it's an open API architecture, the fact that that framework exists and everyone thinks about security natively mitigates a lot of the issue and hopefully creates a strong foundation when 5G comes to deliver even more value added services with security embedded natively. Point taken. Let me come to Kishan. Kishan, as wealth advisors, you have a more discerning and technologically adept customer base whose demands are more personalized. So what kind of changes are you making to keep up with the times?
I think it's very important that we keep technology, we look at technology not at what is present, but what is the future. And say you have to look ahead of time. So that's what we did in ASK. And we looked ahead of times and we said, this is not what is going to sustain or what you have today. And we need to adopt the next generation of technology. So whether we talk of machine learning, whether we talk of automation, whether we talk of cloud or any of your smacks kind of thing, but the basic infrastructure on the security side cannot be compromised. So even the existing tools of security which are there, you have so many tools available. Do you have one single tool or two tools which can actually take care of 50, 60, 70% of your requirement? And then keep on adding to those various elements that we need to look at. So that's where we actually put a huge amount of effort. We actually looked at technologies which will secure our networks, which will allow customers to access our products, which will also allow internal users to work from home and access products in such a way that it is a very secure environment. So those kind of things got adopted. And then on top of that, we added all the bots and machine learning technologies to secure our infrastructure framework and networks. And then we moved, and anyway we were on cloud from day one, so the pandemic was not a reason. So we moved to cloud way back in 2019. So when we actually moved to cloud, we realized that there are more things on the cloud security than we talk of a typical data center security, because once you're on the cloud, you're accessible everywhere and anywhere. So that is a huge challenge. So the importance was actually given prominently to cloud security and how the networks and how the tools in cloud security will behave, what kind of responses need to be taken, because the business that we are is into high net worth business individuals, HNI and ultra HNI customers. Not that they are all the people are going to use technology, because the relationship managers are more important, but still they do use technology to a thing. So how do we make it seamless for them to access this technology is something which we embarked on, and it was quite successful, because as Prashant said, we removed the barriers of channels. We said you will use net, you will use this, you will use that, all those kind of traditional stuff we stopped. We said it is pure integration, it's pure APIs. Let's develop it across platforms. You want to handle it on your WhatsApp, do it. You want to handle it on your mobile, you do it. You handle it on any other social media platform, get it done. So we took the initiative of opening up the entire channel services, because we had a very secure environment. At the same time, when we actually built the platform and foundation, we adopted CI/CDs. So normally continuous integration, continuous development, but we also added a security layer on top of that. So whenever CI/CD came into place, the integration and the development, the security aspect was also taken care at a foundation level. So that helped us in a big way. So that actually paved way, and some of my past experiences of having done that in my this thing really paved way to change things out here. And the whole digital framework today that we have is seamless integration. We don't have people around handling things. It's customers are able to do it on their own. They're able to fill up the forms. It directly comes to the system. So it's a complete STP kind of an environment that we've been placed. And it was good that the traditionally adoption of digital technologies has always been a challenge in banks, but I should thank the pandemic, not in that way, but the forceful adoption of digital technologies came in as a huge boon, because that actually created a huge amount of innovation in the market, which resulted in the whole digital transformation story. So if you look at it more, it is more people moving into the cloud, which has been talked about for a long time, more people adopting digital standards, which has been talked for a long time. And at the same time, the entire way and one looks at security, because previously it was network security, hardware, routers, and those layers. But today it is the layer of which an application security needs to be looked at is actually at a quite a different level from what we were thinking about 2 years back or 3 years back. So I think those are the changes that we have adopted, and that has paved way for a huge amount of growth within the system. So
All right.
that's what I think.
All right, fantastic. Now that we have set the stage in terms of, the blueprint which has allowed for transformation, digital transformation with security embedded natively, and the value that it's delivering both for the enterprise and customers from the experience of, say, the logistics sector, the insurance sector, the banking sector, and of course the investment management sector. Let's now come to Gaurav to understand, how the trend is shaping up broadly. Gaurav, the move towards a cloud foundation for a company is going to make rethinking security models itself as a key part of the conversation. So do you think it's time to discard incremental thinking when it comes to dealing with security challenges of today?
Oh, definitely, Gautam. My fellow panelists are mainly from BFSI and logistics, segments, and BFSI being, they're very particular about security means, right? So those are, the organizations which are the forerunners in this, in the security. But the points that Krishan, talked about, is when you move to cloud, what happens? Right. So if we not long back, a lot of organizations, lot of enterprises, had their data centers, their enterprise networks. They were all, encompassed in the enterprise architecture, if you see, and there was a network perimeter, which used to have the data center offices, users, on-prem applications. In fact, the data, everything was within the corporate network. And that corporate network could be secured by, say, putting a firewall, right? If you need to extend that corporate network, you could use a VPN, and even if the users who are outside of that could access or could come to this network. But what has happened through the digital transformation, this whole architecture is changing, right? So earlier, whoever was outside of this corporate network could be, could not be trusted. Anybody who was inside the corporate network could be trusted. The security policies were designed depending on from where you are accessing an application, where you are sitting, right? But now through digital transformation, what has happened is a lot of these applications, a lot of data has moved to cloud, which has moved out of the corporate network. And the users who used to be in the office, now they could access the applications from anywhere. Of course, our customers are anywhere outside and anywhere, but the employees, the partners now access those applications from anywhere. So as this whole thing has basically inverted the network and security design, what has happened, the focal point now is no longer the data center security. The focal point has now become the identity of the user, and the device from where this data, the application is being accessed, right? And Gartner has come up with this whole new SASE model, right, where they talk about that the network and security has to be integrated, right? And once you combine the robustness of security function as well as truly modern network, you could then enable the users to access the applications securely. You could then be sure that yes, there are not security loopholes are not there any longer, right?
All right. So
So
that's the way the thinking has shifted, where you're saying it's now more on user security rather than just focusing on data center security.
that is right. So you now need to know who the user is. You need to know, are they, first of all, you need to authenticate the user, right? Because user, the device, now it's not just a user, right? It's the devices also now accessing our application. So we need to know the user, the device, their identity. That becomes important. And the second thing is, of course, authorization. Are they authorized to use or access the information, right? The application. Do they have that? Now, a lot of technologies that are evolving is to enable these two things, right? How do we authenticate the user? How do we really know the user who's saying is the user is the right person, is accessing the application data? And second is whether they are authorized. And how do you do that, right? So maybe before I get to, so maybe, how do you do like user authentication is through the zero trust model. Now you do not assume the user to be who they are saying they are, right? So at every point of, when they're accessing application, you need to keep verifying whether it's the same user, what is the context from where they are coming, what is the time at what they are accessing. So there's a lot of other information being combined to look at and identifying a user, right? So the zero trust technologies are enabling us to do that. The second thing is happening around authentication, the authorization, right? So basically the access, which earlier used to be implicit allow depending on where the user is, it is now default deny, right? So you do not allow anybody to access anything, right? You actually look at who's accessing, and for every access you check whether this person is supposed to access this or not, right? So now this default deny has become the new paradigm, right? So you don't allow anybody to access anything. So these are the zero trust technologies which are allowing us to do this. The second thing is, of course, SD-WAN, because when you are now you have to access things from various networks, from various locations, and not necessarily you are always coming to the data center. Some applications may be in data centers, some may be on cloud. They talk to each other in this multi-cloud environment, hybrid cloud environment. To manage this, or rather to access this in an efficient way, we need SD-WAN, right? Which allows us to, as and when needed, you can use increased bandwidth, decreased bandwidth. You can use broadband. Not necessarily everywhere the VPN or the enterprise network is available. So SD-WAN is another technology which is helping us to to access all of this in this environment. And maybe there are a few other applications like of course multi-factor authentication that has been talked about, that the regulators are making mandatory, but it is being used in other industries as well. We have secured web gateway solutions to ensure that companies can apply security policies and filters at right places. Right. We also have things like encrypt all the data when it is sitting in cloud. So while the data might be in rest, make it encrypted. So even if there is a breach, you don't lose data, because again there are regulatory requirements around that, as well as of course it is important for enterprise. Yeah, these are some of the trends that I.
So considering all these options that we see, let me get a response from Pawan and Prasanna on this. How do you enforce security at its most granular level since it's now about user security and not just a data center security, and yet make it consistent across the entire application? Pawan, I'll come to you first. If you could suggest some use cases, and then I'll come to Prasanna for his view.
Sure. So first of all, I would like to second the thought what Gaurav has said, that earlier it used to be the perimeter security, which we always talked about, putting firewalls, next generation firewalls at the perimeter level of an organization, and then putting routers and other security, built-in security from that. So it used to start from top to bottom. Now it has gone from bottom to top. Your perimeter has changed to a user machine now. So when it has come to the user machine, you need to ensure that whatever he is accessing, a user is accessing or downloading, working on, need to be secure. So what we used to take it as a second line of defense while putting next generation antivirus or encrypting the data which is there on the desktops, which always used to be considered as a priority for servers and other components which are there on the network. Now that has come to the user level. So it is very important to ensure that devices which are there with users, because most of us are working from home today, and it is going to continue for next, and if the way I look at it, for another at least year and a half, by the time things started settling down and we starting to see the office today. If I tell you, it's been more than 1.5 years I have not been to office. 13th March 2020 was the last day when I was in office. Till today, I have not even visited the office or even to the nearest branch. I don't know for how long it is going to continue. And like I said, that the way I look at it, it's going to be there for another year and a half easily. The time things start settling down. So till that time, you can't leave your end point perimeter unsecured. So certain things which are very important is first and the foremost thing is to see that what users has access to. The user should be given access on need to know basis. Rather than when they were on a corporate network, they may used to have access to 10 other things, but when they are working from home, it becomes of utmost priority, because if their account get compromised, your other aspect will also starting getting compromised. And the way hackers are maturing, I would use the word mature, because they are coming up with new technologies, new ways of hacking. There are new vulnerabilities which are coming up. You may not even realize, but they know what they are up to, and they know where they need to target. Hence, it is very important to secure your educate the user and put restriction around that area. Second is encrypting whatever user has within their parameter or within their machine. Encrypt the data. So third thing is it's need to see the user behavior. It is very important to monitor where they are going, what all websites they are accessing, what files they are working on, and restrict that out to whatever is needed for the business purposes only. Hence, EDR plays a very important role, which is endpoint detection and response. At the time you have visibility, you will not be able to protect that out. Now, another very important aspect, which I always consider my favorite, is the user awareness. Because if you look at any hack in the world, it starts from the user. I'll give you a very classic example. If I remember it correctly, it happened in 2016, Boeing hack. There were around 36,000 employees data which was released on the darknet, which includes the social security number of the user. And it was because of a very small mistake. The user was the part of the HR. He needed some help on pivoting and putting a formatting of that particular Excel. He didn't knew how to do it. Her wife was an expert on Excel. He forwarded that file to her wife to format that out and send it back to her. Sent it back to him, and that had happened till the time the home machine got hacked, and the entire data was on darknet with all 36,000 employees social security number up for sale for only $3. And even at a later stage, it became $3, but initially it was a higher cost. But but that is there. Now, user awareness becomes a very important role. You have to educate user with the latest hacks, the way it is happening. You need to keep on circulating emailers internally, educating users, do phishing campaign regularly so that they are up to date. They know what kind of attacks can happen. It is not only important for the organization, for an individual personal life as well. The way hackers are evolving, we see that every day you hear a news, somebody's account has been debited with X amount because they don't know what to do. Now, recently I heard there was another case which had happened. Somebody asked them to download a application, and it was actually an SMS forwarder. The moment the OTP came, it got forwarded to a different number, and the hacker was able to steal that money.
Absolutely.
An elderly couple lost 75,000 rupees because of that, and it's as simple because they are not aware of it. And similar, your employees are also not aware the new way of hacking. The hackers are coming up. You have to make them educated. The moment you come to know about it, please create an emailer and circulate that internally so that they are well versed with do's and don'ts. What
Sort
they
of
need
like
to
a
do.
bulletin, sort of like a bulletin, and that works especially from a workforce perspective. For the customer perspective, in terms of user security, it can also be a sort of a brand builder where the customer gets the impression that the brand is concerned about security. Fair point taken. Let me come to Prasanna, especially relevant in the banking sector. As Pawan said, we hear all these, the headlines come from the banking sector whenever we talk about, these security cases. So from your perspective, how do you think, we've been discussing it from a user security perspective, where the thinking is now shifted from data security to user security. And in, say, the context of employees, we'll come to the customers later. In the context of employee user security, how can security be enforced at the most granular level of the, of what we're talking about in terms of user security? If you can give us some use cases about the possibilities involved in enhancing enterprise security.
I think a very good question. Why? Because I think all of our friends will agree that 80 to 90% hacks which has happened so far in the world, right? It is all because of some kind of internal negligence, or some kind of one of your employee might have clicked some unnecessary email he might not aware, or some usage of some USB as an endpoint, putting in some laptop, and that has taken access within your network. I think it's very, very important aspect to create internal awareness, right? How internal awareness. I think at a bank level, we keep on not only on desktops, we keep on doing those awareness sessions on every employee level, and it has some minimum mark also to pass that exam. So this is what, and moreover, we do some kind of a social engineering exercises, sending some email coming from your MD's email, right? May not be having at the rate of my bank's domain, but some other domain, and how many have really clicked that, and those are penalized, or those are asked to do some additional work or additional awareness sessions. So I think that's very important. It's a responsibility of every employee as far as a cybersecurity or security is concerned.
But what
And
about
it
in terms
starts
of
with
network architecture? We have spoken about education. What about network architecture?
Absolutely, I'm coming to you. So I think there are guidelines, right, given by RBI. So how do we really safeguard our networks and operation? So we have created zones, right? So user zone, and within a network as well, there is a DMZ where web servers will be there. Your inside a network will have your app servers and so on. And within user areas, right? So user areas networks, all these networks are segregated in different IP addresses, or segments of the IP addresses, right? IP segments and so on. So this kind of things which we take care of, it has become a sanity for every bank to really have these kind of things. And at the application level also, like Pawan was saying, right? So when you're creating a user or deleting user, it has its own SOP, right? And it will be managed by a set of users only within your bank, right? Called as a, say, example, user access management team. They are allowed to create user, they are allowed to delete users, and that too whenever they are creating users, how much access right to be provided, or how long it should be provided. So these are weighted during the audit, or during the visits of external auditor or internal auditor, or even regulator. These are one of those points, right? User management is one of the point which is taken very, very seriously within a bank. Okay, so I think these are some of the things at a internal user level
Okay.
Okay. Moreover, I think what we have seen, we have implemented some other technologies which says like users are accessing what website, how long, what they are really looking at, what they are clicking, right? Or even a developer or a your desktop engineer or even system admin who are doing the production movements. What is there they are doing, right? So we complete recording and complete second factor authentication while they are accessing those servers. So I think it is being implemented so far so good now. And your desktops, your laptops, everything has to be patched properly, right? You should not have a OS which is a backdated OS, or even some of those patches on your servers. On it may be a database or OS, and it is as a discipline. It is a, so this is what I was saying, having a governance structure, and which is having governance system taking care of these guidelines on a regularly basis. It's not like once we upgrade the DB or deployed and just work is done. So no, on a regularly basis, the importance is the responsibility of governance or infra team to oversee how many are outdated, where are those patches are remaining, even during production movement, right? So it's a responsibility of IT security and even infra team to harden the server, right? And to see what all those gaps or some vulnerabilities or VAPTs are during the VAPT they find out. So before going into production environment, you are well equipped environment for your customer, which is the other part, right? So there are other security guidelines, there are other security controls to be implemented for a customer end, but at a
Sure.
internally. So when your internal users are accessing servers, or your internal users at operations are utilizing your applications, so I think at a various level we have at a network level or at a user access level, role level, or having those additional second factor authentication while accessing any of the systems, implementation of IDAM, implementation of AD in every application, right? So these are all the things are being implemented at a application level, or at a
All right.
network level, or at a server level. Yeah.
All right. Maria, you have a point to add to what Pavan and Prasanna spoke?
Yeah, I think at an industry level, every organization like a banking or a BFSI segment or a logistics sectors, we would have different levels of security implemented. Okay. And we would also have governance standards linked to it. You would have for a banking RBI, you would have for BFSI, some other auditing companies, you have your internal audits, everything. But we have to understand and know what the problem is. As a corporate level, the frauds have become much lesser. At an individual level, people are losing money. Operating on the same environment, same platforms, having security at the topmost.
Okay.
If I am a user of I'm an employee of a bank, and I am an employee of a logistics company, both the people are losing money at an individual level because the fraudsters are looking at not the technology and the firewall deployed. I think we have to understand what the basic part is. Today, crores of rupees are getting lost. So when I'm talking about awareness levels, it's good to send out a mail talking about a PPT. But are users using it, looking at it? How many people would open it and see that, yes, these are the awareness things and they should do or not do?
No, that's a fair point, Maria. I take that
Let
point.
me just complete one point there. All I'm trying to say is that look at AI ML there. Look at the digitization there, which can be helped out. I think the context is very, very important for us to know and attack the point out. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. I understand your point where you say that it's not just the education part, but it's also using technologies like AI and ML to kind of solve the problem before it even arises, so that you have all the checks and balances in place. Keeping that in mind, let me come to you, Gaurav. How can companies then end data silos and yet compartmentalize the network to enhance security? It's a bit of a catch-22, right? If you have security issues, if you have breaches, you don't want it to spread. Now, there having a sort of an open ground makes you vulnerable where the breach spreads. So how do you make sure that it's siloed and yet open for everyone in the enterprise?
Right. So also a lot of this is based on how do we design our security policies, how those are implemented, right? So first of all, as you have applications, who can access those? What can they access, right? All of that has to be designed very well. Means it goes down to the architecture, the enterprise architecture overall, as well as at the application level, right? So the security can't be an afterthought now. The security, as we are designing the application, as we are designing the network, it has to be part of that thought process, and it has to be integrated. Means it can't be that access to a particular network or a particular application, a particular data. This all needs to get integrated. So that is what now it has to go down to the architecture level. It has to go down at each component level. That's how we have to start thinking about it. And then of course SASE helps us in terms of getting the security and network together. So of course it has to be on the network, it has to be on the application, it has to be on the data, and then the policies define that, okay, the users and devices who are accessing that, are they the right, are they the right people and the right devices, as well as can they access that. And then when we apply this policy, the security policy, right, of course there are various ways to do it, but maybe ideally what we can see is that centrally designed and locally implemented, kind of, right? So we need to, at an enterprise level, have to have a central security policy, and then it gets deployed at at a network node, at the application node, at the data node. That's how I see it evolving.
All right. To close this loop before we move to another part of this conversation, Pawan, we discussed the workforce aspect of it, but looking at the customer data point of view, today customers say for seek life insurance cover or they file for claims. They're interacting with insurance companies across multiple devices and platforms. So how can companies identify vulnerabilities in the network and perform static and dynamic security assessments to keep consumer data safe?
Security, like I said, it starts from day one. So the moment you start think of starting building the application, you have to think of security. You can't bring it at a later stage. So to ensure, because right now, if you look at the touch points, there are various touch points through which a customer can reach out to you, and security has to be part of every touch point. You have to keep on doing the regular assessments. The vulnerability assessment has to be rigorously implemented within the organization in your SDLC process itself. When you are building an application, when you're creating an architecture, whether it is a network, whether it is a telecom infrastructure, you have to think of security, because today anything can happen. Now, giving you an example, there was while there was a Zoom vulnerability, we are using Zoom so today, but there was a Zoom vulnerability where in the live session somebody played a pawn. It had happened a few days back, because there was a vulnerability which was there. Hence, it is very important that you need to be aware of what vulnerabilities you are in, and how you can be make aware of that is by doing regularly vulnerability assessment of each and every application. Now, the vulnerability assessment has to be done with after every change. So the way we practice a policy is we have two security gates. Whenever there is a change happen, it has to have, the application has to go through a security assessment, and before it goes to the production, it has to after it has been fixed in the UAT environment. Before it goes into the production, we again do a thorough check of the application, and then only we put it in the production environment. Similarly, this is about the application security, which is static. Now let's talk about, this is about dynamic. Now let's talk about static, because when you are building a code, if you start building the application, start building the security within the application, the code will be robust, and you will have less challenges at a later stage. Hence, the code has to be analyzed regularly, specifically. Because you don't make too many changes, you keep on adding modules into the code, right?
A regular audit is required, in your opinion.
Regular audit is very much required. That has to be part of your security. You may decide as an organization to do it every quarter, every 6 months, or every year, but somebody has to look at the code, how it has been created, what all third-party APIs you are using, what integration you have done, because you are as secure as your vendors. You may be secure, you are securing your home, but if you use a third-party API, if they are vulnerable, you are equally vulnerable as they are today, of which you may not be aware of. So hence, you need to be very, very, very cognizant of this particular pattern. Keep on doing this rigorous exercise throughout the year. So our regulator is also very stringent on this, but as an organization, that is a practice I personally recommend everybody should follow, because as an organization, we are following this practice.
Fair
and
point.
that is how we have been able to secure ourselves so far.
All right. So that's the lesson there.
Gautam, just
Prasanna,
to
yes, go
support,
ahead.
yeah, I think what Narayar said now. So I think just to support, it's a practice, and every bank does follow this practice. Okay, so
Mm,
any software, this is what I was saying. Right? Any software goes into production, so source code audits or each and every component, right? It is validated. Say it's a web or mobile app. So I think good points. I think what is really troubling me right now
mm,
when we'll see the future, right? So there are different form factors, right? So IoTs or variables will be your transactional form factors. So today,
mm.
customer, imagine, right? So we used to go to bank branch to do a. We used to go there. We used to reach there, right? So now the channels are coming towards close to you, right? So your
Mm.
mobile phone is inside your pocket and you can do
It's all in
transaction
the
now.
edge case now.
Yeah, so now channels will go again away from you, right? So
Mm,
because you will say I am sitting here, I will do a voice command here, and my electricity appliance sitting at home will pay off its electricity bill payment, right? So that's how it's gonna be the. So so these kind of things, how will really safeguard? There are not
mm,
much standards around IoTs, right, to really safeguard. So how do we adopt other technologies like AI or ML or blockchain? How do we create a hash of whole network and say if
mm.
any malware comes in my network and automatically hash value changes, so immediately I tackle that whole things. So I think these kind of things which I am really looking at a service providers level. So
Fair
maybe
point.
we can
I'll
hear from
extend that
yeah,
conversation and ask how can it be low friction? At the end of the day,
yeah.
we know that we need more enterprise security and it needs to be embedded in what we do. But the point is also how to make it low friction within the enterprise. And Kishan, I'll come to you. You know, this sudden shift to digital with say a mobile workforce, multi-cloud networks and hyper-connected networks, that has expanded the scope of security itself, putting business, people, and data at a greater risk than ever before. So as organizations like yours embark on digital journeys, digitization journeys, how did you make your cloud or network security low friction for both, say, the development and security teams? You're on mute, Kishan. If you could unmute yourself.
Want to break it up into three parts.
Mm,
I mean, the traditional things about access on your network and your firewalls, those are bound to stay. They're not going away soon anywhere.
mm,
So that will continue. Only thing, the enhancements of those with new technologies, newer technology areas will continue. The second important point is on the cloud security. So that is where I would emphasize on what Gaurav said, that today your architecture has to be very strong. So that is the second layer. And then the third layer is the user layer, and other application layer. And then the final layer is the user layer.
mm,
The point is, unless you define your architecture well, it is not going to happen. So the base stuff, I mean, I would go today, given my experience on this, is you have to go up to the memory level. That means at the DMA level, or direct memory access, what you studied in college or school, that level you have to go in order to take care of your vulnerabilities, machines, and other stuff. So you can't change those kind of things. So fundamentals will remain fundamentals. What is more important is how do you encompass or bring the whole security together, which is what is the biggest challenge today. Security in most organizations or people who are trying to get into is in a fragmented way. That fragmentation has to go away to give rise to an enterprise architecture. And
mm,
once you give rise to an enterprise architecture, many of these problems would. So I usually look at it and experience it from movies point of view. So when you look at this kind of a thing, all these and the physical thing, and you like, for example, let's say if you take our army, we have got the central command now. So you get the Air Force, Navy, everything together, yet you will have people fighting on what is to be done and what is not to be done, and why am I important and why are you not important. So those kind of things. So how you define the architecture, how do you define the structure, that is very important. The third and the most important layer is on the application front. So as I said earlier, CI/CD, that means when you are doing continuous development and continuous integration
Yes.
and continuous innovation or whatever you call it, those things need to be a part. So security needs to be a part of it. Now there are different things. If you are an in-house developer, then you can
mm,
build all those kind of things. Now if you are getting a out on the shelf kind of a thing or a COTS application, then you will have to sit with the vendor and do a thorough analysis of how that can be done. And not all application vendors will have this thing saying that we cannot do this, we do it on this particular port and all those kind of things. It is just like saying APIfication, and everybody will have APIs in everybody. And that's a myth, because now no vendor wants to give API out. No, this thing, there are standards, but it has been there for donkeys years, but nobody will implement it, and no vendor will go for it. So the question is, how do we maximize on this and make the best use of technology to use these kind of things? The last example on the application side is also, I would give it an example like what you do in movies. If you have watched the Independence Day movie and the last scene, when that guy tries to give it a virus on the plane, there is a layer which supports the aircraft. And then he gives it a virus, and then he shoots down the bottle to see that the virus is removed. That layer of security is something, but that movie showed it after 75 years. But the problem is today, these things have to be very fast, because given, the reason I'm saying this is, given that you have got all these hashes and dashes which are there in security, given that super or quantum computing is coming into play, the ability to crunch numbers and the ability to break codes becomes much faster. You forget about all the other things that you have done in the past. That's all history. You are talking of what these things, and even what I think about other people are a little outdated, in fact, of all these kind of things. Even regulators are still trying to catch up. They are getting the fundamentals done in order to, and they're only giving guidelines. They don't have a clear-cut policy or this thing as to this is it and this is how it needs to be done. They give you a guideline, you follow the guideline. But the point here is, how do you prevent these things in the future? Because this is the new way of life. So can you do that? Can you put those things in place? Can you get your architecture? Can you get the application? And finally, of course, the users. Today, given the fact that everybody is working from home, you have unsafe networks. Like I'm talking to you on a geo fiber network or a broadband, for all you know. How do I know it is secure? I mean, it can be hacked. It can come into that.
Absolutely.
So you have to build your own tools to do all these things, whereby my system is going to be used to connect only to my office. And that is a big fight, because users will say, I have to pay my bills, I have to access this, I have to do that, and all these kind of things will come in. But the point is, when you connect this machine, how do you ensure that this machine directly connects? That's when you do this SASC kind of a zero trust kind of a tool to bring into those areas and get these kind of things. So my view on these things is, unless you build these 3-4, understand and get into the basics of these kind of stuff, it is not going to work. And today also, not today, I think the next few years, the whole thing about the way we handle security and other things need to change, and it will change. Otherwise, we are in for trouble. And with quantum computing coming in, your ability to break all these security hash algorithms and other things is only it's just about 1 year or 6 months away. You Google and Microsoft and IBM have already done this with quantum computing. So now with those kind of things coming in, the ability to break into servers is much more faster, giving us the opportunity to do it. So unless you build in these kind of layers of security and you build that kind of a shield which that aircraft had on your thing and allow you to do that, which will also be broken in a faster pace, but at least you know you have something to support yourself there. So that's my take on this. And I think we should leave this, we should forget thinking about all the traditional past ways of security and move to the next level. And see how you can watch it in the movies and do that. That's the best way.
Absolutely. And to use your movie analogy, there is a thin red line separating fact and fiction. And I guess when it comes to security, the importance is more about asking the right questions so that you can address those issues, which is a fair point. We're almost at the top of the hour. So I'll get one response from Mariar on what you have said, and also ask him a question around the fact that he said earlier that, maybe we should be using more machine learning for enterprise security. I want to look at it also at the fact that, the logistics sector is also automating many of its processes to create product innovation, improve time to market, and improve tracking accuracy. So as automation goes up in importance in operations, what are you doing to secure automation?
See, most of our working is for our customers. So if you look at any of our operations, whether it's in freight forwarding or 3PL, most of the data we operate for is for the customers. So it is very, very important that the data we operate for our customers is very secure. And in what way we can secure them. So I think as a logistics company, we have all the basics of security in place. It is like, how much is enough in security? We might go and talk about a lot of things: identity management, firewalls, DLP layers and blah, 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 I would say. But is it going to protect you? I think that is what we need to understand as a sector. Probably it might be required in a banking scenario or a BFSI scenario. Is it required in a logistics scenario? I think that is something that we need to assess as a CIO, CTO, or a CSO. You need to look at these particular parts. The other part which Prasanna probably and also touched by Gaurav is that the governance standards. So we also look at certain standards of ISO that we have implemented. We have looked at protecting our data, how secure it can be moving within the organization and outside the organization. So these are policy decisions that we have applied on our way of working. That is going to be very, very prime. See, these are some of the basic stuffs.
Yes.
Security is not high up in Mars. We have to understand that security basic steps is going to really protect you. Understand something very, very clearly. I think whatever we talk about is something that we can apply at the top level, but still be unsecure. I think that is something what we have done as an organization, and we feel that we have got great amount of results doing that.
All right, make it part of the program rather than put it on some theoretical pedestal and not understand its true value and use case as it comes. That's a great insight from you. But we are almost out of time, so let's wrap up this discussion with a view from Gaurav as a transformation enabler. Bring all the talking points together and tell us, how do you see enterprises from here on moving security controls on the cloud closer to the edge and performance optimization ready from the edge. As Prasanna had said, everything is going to be on the edge right now. So where do things go from here?
Right. So I think we already discussed and established that digital business transformation, edge computing, right? They are there, right? And they have inverted the access requirements. Now more users, devices, applications, data, everything is located outside of enterprise and all over the globe. Means it's not that it is just outside, right? It could be anywhere, right? And it is being accessed from anywhere. So it does mean that we absolutely need security at every stage of this digital journey. There is no two ways about it. But for doing this, as customers, employees, partners, everyone has to basically perform their jobs on our enterprise applications. So while we have to ensure that it is secured, any deterioration of application performance would not be acceptable. Right. So we do have to manage both, right? We have to make sure that it is secured. We also have to make sure that the performance levels are up to the mark, right? And to do that, now what happens is the cloud delivered security solutions, right, which are which apply the security on the edge, and they don't backhaul the traffic to the data centers, right? So they can take the decisions, the security decisions on the cloud there itself without having to add latency in doing that, is going to be important. And as 5G comes, we will see a lot of new use cases coming up where the data will be processed and will be generated. So much data will be generated on the edge that if we really need to actually secure it and we think that we have to go back to inspect that packet at the data center, that's not going to work. So we will have to have this cloud base on the edge security technologies. We will have to use it. It'll help us, first of all, in the performance. On the other side, of course, it will save cost in terms of the MPLS connectivity that you may need, like things like that. So I definitely see that going forward, a lot of security is going to be on cloud. You will have instead of creating your own SOCs, people will start using cloud SOCs, which will be deployed everywhere. And the idea will be that the governance and the policies will have to be designed centrally, but those will have to be deployed at at different local points where the user is there, where the data is there, and where the action happening. So that's how I see it evolving.
All right, I guess that's security brings out the richness in your corporate fabric, so weave it in wherever you can. That's the message coming out of this discussion. But we've run out of time, so we'll wrap things up. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today and sharing with us your insight. It was a great conversation, and I'm sure the conversation around security itself evolves so much that the next time we meet, we'll have a whole range of different talking points. But thank you again so much for joining off. And before we sign off, I'd also like to thank Tata Communications for partnering with us for today's session. And of course, thank you to our viewers for tuning in. We'll be back with yet another session very soon. Till then, stay well and take care. This is Gautam Srinivasan signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.